Well, folks, welcome to another extravaganza into, I guess you could call it podcast excellence. Now, we've had a lot of things that have transpired over the past week. For example, here in Florida, we had Hurricane Al Diarrhea, whatever it is, Al Diarrhea, whatever they want to call it. And we're still trying to get to the bottom of the fires in Hawaii. Now, yet, it just so happens that the fires in Hawaii may have been a scheme for the rich Democrats to take up new land. We'll get to that a little bit later. It does make sense. But, as we have ascertained, Joe Biden and the Democrats, as usual, are using this as political advantage to their advantage and to everyone else's detriment. Let me be frank. So, the Lahaina blaze, we're not even going to get to that. We're going to stick to we'll get to the Lahaina blaze. Well, you know what? Maybe we'll start first with that. So this is from the Honolulu Civil Beat. The Lahaina blaze is rekindling an old debate over using water to fight fires. Article reads, after wildfires swept Maui in 2019, a state senator from the island introduced a bill proposing to amend the Hawaii Water Code to support the bill's overreaching premise. It is important that there be water in the former plantation reservoirs so there is quicker access to fresh water to control fires, the preamble said. Senator Gil Keith Agaran's measure passed out of the Senate and one House committee before stalling. In the meantime, there was lively testimony presaging debates that have unfolded amid a series of devastating wildfires on Maui this month. The fight centers on how much power owners of private water systems should have to divert streams. All right, let me rephrase this. The fight centers on how much power owners of private water systems should have to fight streams to fill their plantation-era reservoirs with water to control wildflowers. On one side of the 2020 bills, porters like Department of Land and Natural Resources, Mahi Pono, a large landowner, and the Maui Fire Department. Opponents included Sierra Club, Earth Justice, Native Hawaiian Legal Corp, and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. OHA is concerned that this measure would encourage and promote corporate and private water banking in contravention to the public trust doctrine in a manner that may comprise the integrity and function of our watersheds without questionable benefits to the overall safety of the public, OHA wrote in its testimony, referring to the principle that the stream water is protected as public resource under Hawaii law. Earth Justice, remember that name, Isaac Murawake, echoed OHA in the organization testimony, saying the bill sponsored by Keith Agaran and former Senators Kai Kahale and Gil Riviere went too far. Quote, while fire safety is certainly in the public interest, amending the code to justify the banking of water in former plantation reservoirs or solely for such potential use is neither advisable nor necessary, Murawake wrote. And then fast forward 3 years. The impasse has grown. Arguments are even more impassioned. Landowners insist it is simply common sense to divert stream water to reservoirs to use if it's needed during wildfires. Environmental groups and Native Hawaiian advocates say the landowners are using the destruction of Lahaina as an excuse to bank water they don't need for fire safety, a continuation of plantation water hoarding at the expense of the traditional Native Hawaiian farmers and other users. Moriwaki said in an interview that the battle over water in Maui has turned more intense than he has seen in decades of handling contentious legal cases over water. He blames business interests. They see an opening and they grab like hell, he said. Given such mistrust, there is no clear solution. Certainly not a quick one. Now, let me just put it here, folks, before I continue with this. Environmental groups and Native Hawaiian advocates say the landowners are using the destruction of Lahaina to bank water they don't need for fire safety. And again, let's go back 3 years. While fire safety is certain in the general public interest, amending the code to justify the banking of water in former plantation reservoirs specifically or solely for such potential use is neither advisable nor necessary. Well, it just so happens that they didn't have the banking of water to put out the fires. And let's just put another name in here, Earth Justice, a woke climate change organization. An article goes on to say ignoring water issues and water conflict doesn't make it go away, said Jonathan Schuer, former chairman of the Hawaii Land Use Commission and co-author of the book Water and Power in West Maui. During the many decades in which public trust's rights to water were ignored, it didn't so much eliminate the conflict as make those on the losing side of the conflict and their losses invisible. The system works, he said, even if it can take years. However, on August 9th, as fire still smoldered in Maui's upcountry, the Hawaii Attorney General petitioned the Hawaii Supreme Court to order a lower court judge to relinquish case pending before the lower court. The Attorney General said the lower court judge had hindered the firefighting effort. Maui is in peril and is ravaged by wildfires. The Attorney General's office wrote in his petition. Central Maui has no water for fire reserve because the respondent's judge substituted his judgment for that of the agency. As a result, there was not enough permitted water to battle the wildfires on Maui this morning. During an oral argument Wednesday, the Hawaii Supreme Court Justice Todd Edens upbraided Miranda Steed, the Deputy Attorney General representing the Department of Land and Natural Resources, for those opening lines in the petition. The department, in essence, was blaming Hawaii Environmental Court Judge Jeffrey Crabtree. Crabtree. South Park, Miss Crabtree. They fly over some heads. For hindering the ability to use water to fight fires on Maui. Your petition is replete with intemperate language relating to the respondent judge in the case, and I don't see any factual support for it, Edens said at one point. Steed refused to back down, even though Justice Sabrina McKenna enjoined Edens, reportedly asking the Deputy Attorney General to retract her statements, which Edens noted were refuted by the case record. Finally, at the end of her argument, Steed concluded, "We're not blaming the circuit judge, and we do apologize for the harshness of the language." The court denied the Attorney General's request the next day. There seems little argument that the water from private reservoirs can be used to fight and control fires. Even if the reservoirs aren't attached to public fire hydrant systems, the water can be scooped out of the reservoirs by helicopters and dumped onto the fire, said Bobby Lee, president of the Hawaii Firefighters Association, a statewide union. It is a good idea if it is in normal weather and the choppers can fly. It is absolutely a good idea. There is another potential use, something that Steed said in her oral argument, as fire suppression. It essentially means using water to create fire breaks by wetting the ground to prevent wildfires from spreading. Whether water from private reservoirs could have been used to fight fires during the West Maui fires earlier this month is another question. It was too windy for firefighting choppers to fly, so they say, and private reservoirs are not connected to fire hydrants in Lahaina. Now, let's rewind a little bit. This is climate alarmists not allowing these reservoirs to be tapped. And they're using excuses like, oh, it was too windy for choppers to fly, but it's not too windy for airplanes to fly. Ways this could have happened. There are ways this could have happened, folks. Not easily, but it could have happened. They're using this as an excuse. And mind you, the Coast Guard, the United States Coast Guard, and there's also airplanes that have rotating motors. You see them on aircraft carriers. I forget exactly what model they are. You can actually, with these airplanes, revert your engines to make it look like top rotors and maintain, pick up the water, go and dump it. This could have been prevented. But the climate alarmists, oh, we don't want to use the water. And it just so happens people like the likes of Oprah Winfrey, to give an example, own a lot of property there. And they're all thinking of buying up all this land that has been burned to the ground. I was watching on, I think it was Jesse Waters on Fox News the other night, where an old Hawaiian woman was saying, "You effed us over. Thank you, Biden." Meanwhile, Biden's blaming it all on climate change, and there's a lot of evidence that points to the fact that this was, well, first, as I said in last week's program, this had nothing to do with climate change. Best case scenario, it simply had to do with a power line blowing down and causing a big fire. Mind you, also, as I said, I believe I said on last week's program, they're talking about plantations and land with underlying water supplies. Well, this land used to be used to grow pineapples in this particular region, as per Will Kane of Fox News, who is a resident of Hawaii. And the only reason we got any of this info because the government didn't want any media going in there because they didn't want any conspiracies to come out. This land used to be grown to grow pineapples, and now, since it was not cost effective to ship them, they grow the pineapples. We import our pineapples from South America. So in these plantations, there's really nothing growing, which makes absolutely no sense as to why they wouldn't want to take the water out. It's nothing but invasive grasses, which turned into a tinderbox. And allegedly, if this was not a laser, a lot of people think it was a laser from a laser plane from the government. I don't know. I haven't dug deep enough into that. Wouldn't surprise me, because they'll do anything to, push their climate change crap further and further down our throats. But I don't see that. I see a bout of incompetence caused by a bunch of climate alarmists who really don't give a rat's ass whether people die. Unfortunately, the people that the climate alarmists tend to hate are rich white people. And they weren't the ones that got the bulk of the damage. A lot of them were native Hawaiians. Speaking of climate alarmists, folks, I'm pretty sure you all saw the thing in the desert in Nevada. Ironically, you got a bunch of libtard climate alarmists blocking a road, which I believe was also in a Native American reservation, a road leading to Burning Man, which is a libtard techno version of Woodstock in the middle of the desert. Their signs saying they wanted to ban private jets and this, that, and the other thing. There were miles of traffic backed up. You had people getting out saying, "Oh, no, I want to go to work. I want to go to work." And it just, people want to go to work. These climate alarmists weren't letting people do that. So after being warned on numerous occasions by the rangers of the national park and as you could see, the people that were in the video, many of you have probably seen it. It's not hard to find. A lot of them were natives. They weren't just white rednecks or anything else. Most of them weren't, actually. The only white people I saw in that video, quote unquote white, with the Democrats described as white, are the people that were blocking the road. So after being warned a bunch of times, a ranger said, "I've had enough of this shit," and drove through their little crappy barricade. handcuffed them all, whatever. And of course, the left is up in arms about it, but they can't really say shit because it was on Native American land. Now, if it was a bunch of Trump supporters protesting on Native American land, I'm sure they'd have a big problem about it. Another thing, there was a racially involved shooting in Jacksonville last weekend, which is a sad thing whenever this stuff happens. Ron DeSantis went out there to offer his condolences and condemn the incident. Of course, he got booed by all the Afro-American folks. And, of course, everybody's blaming this on Florida's new permitless carry law. But let's just turn it around the other way and say perhaps that if the people killed were white, killed by a black person, which happens a lot more often than you might think, it wouldn't be reported. This isn't rocket science, folks. It is a one-sided Democrats being social justice warrior system. And it never works out for the best. It divides the country. You have a loon like Dylan Roof, whatever. There's many of them who have done bad things. You know, there's also the vagina hat wearing guy that shot up the country concert in Vegas, who was an outright Bernie Sanders supporter. There's the Bernie Sanders supporter who shot up the Republican softball game. Those things got memory holed by the left like you couldn't even imagine. The only thing that is keeping this, from being memory holed, not from being memory hold, from being front page news, is the simple fact that there's too much other stuff. You got the Trump trial going on, which they're all jacking off to. You have hurricanes, you have this, that, and the other thing. That's the next thing I'm going to get at here. Is Joe Biden. Yes, Joe Biden. Oh, and Mitch McConnell freezing again. Now, I think McConnell's more competent than Joe Biden, but we had this hurricane here. And I have numbers for you. I have friends all around the country that say Florida is a land of meth heads, hurricanes, and alligators. And, sure, there's meth heads in Florida. There's alligators in Florida. And we do get hurricanes. Damn, Clint Eastwood cigar keeps going out. And we do get hurricanes. We get a lot of hurricanes. But every time a hurricane hits the state of Florida, only the state of Florida, they don't care too much when it hits anywhere else. When it hits the state of Florida, because Ron DeSantis is the governor, when it hits the state of Florida, they get orgasmic. They get crazy. And they say, Joe Biden. Again, right here, my formerly nicotine-stained fingers, as Rush used to say. Joe Biden blames hurricane on climate change because it's the worst one in 120 years to hit the Big Bend. You know what I gotta say, Joe? It's happened before. Worst hurricane to hit this country to date was 1935. Hasn't even gotten close. So, Let's shove a thorn in the Democrats' climate change alarmist bullcrap about hurricanes, shall we? Okay, numbers here. Let's go. This is just Florida, folks. Now, let me remind you before I get into this, which I've said many times on, I believe, on this channel and many times on my previous channel that got canceled because YouTube doesn't know how to determine misinformation, obviously. Okay, so pre-1900. This is Wikipedia. It could be edited, whatever, but it's the best thing I have. First recorded tropical cyclone because it was in 1523 when two ships and their crews were lost along the western coastline. A total of 159 hurricanes are known to have affected the state prior to 1900, which collectively resulted in 6,540 fatalities and monetary damage over 102 million in 2017 dollars. Now let's rephrase this and refer to the point. Affected the state prior to 1900. 159 hurricanes. Okay? You hearing that? You're hearing that. 159 hurricanes are known to have affected the state prior to 1900. Since, Florida holds like the oldest city in the country since the 1500s. That's what's on record. Now, bear with me, folks. We're going to go through the numbers here. Now we have 1900 and 1949. The period between 1900 and 1949, 108 tropical cyclones affected the state, which collectively resulted in about $4.5 billion in 2017 dollars in damage. Additionally, tropical cyclones in Florida were directly responsible for about 3,500 fatalities during the period, most of which were from the 1928 Okeechobee hurricane. The 1947 was the year with the most cyclones affected the state, with a total of 6 systems. The 1905, 1908, 1913, 1927, 1931, 42, 43 seasons were the only years during the period in which a storm did not affect the state. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years out of 50. Okay. Strongest hurricane that hit the state during the period was a 1935 Labor Day hurricane, which is the strongest hurricane on record to strike the United States. Several other major hurricanes struck the state during the period, including the 1926 Miami hurricane, 1928 Okeechobee hurricane, and several Category 4 hurricanes in the period 1945 to 50. Several Category 4 hurricanes in the period 1945 to 50, when the Earth's climate was set to be boo-hoo, everything's fucking boom and good. 4. Several is more than 3. Several Category 4 hurricanes in a 5-year period. Jeez, have we got... I don't know. Maybe we have. Oh, I think we have. Yeah. It's the same as now as it was 70 years ago. Okay. 50 to 74. 1950 to 24 years. 85. Okay. We're looking at 85. It's a little more frequent. Tropical or subtropical. They say tropical or subtropical. Whereas when they go 1900, 1949, they only say tropical cyclones. Now they're changing the words, you see? Trying to make the climate change come in. Again, this is Wikipedia. 69, yeah, Donna, Dora. 69 was the strongest hurricane on record to hit. This is Hurricane Donna, which was the 10th strongest hurricane on record to touch the United States. Doesn't tell you how strong it was. You know why, folks? Well, let's finish. 1975 to 1999. Strongest hurricane to hit the hurricane was Hurricane Andrew, which was only 4 Category 5 hurricanes strike the United States. Andrew was the costliest in history. It was a little tiny storm. I lived through it. 2000 to present. 83 storms between 75 and 99. 85 storms between 50 and 74. 79 between 2000 and present. That's a little less, folks, is it not? You think? So when you look at the numbers, sure, there's more storms, allegedly. The one thing you also have to take into account when it comes to these species of things is the fact that before 1965, there was no satellite radar. So unless you were on a ship going through a storm or on an airplane flying through a storm, you had no idea there were any out there. So sure as hell, we could have had years with just as many named storms, if not more than we have now, spinning off the coast of Africa, where nobody would have even known they were there. So climate change, being a director of these storms, is complete and total bullshit. Because like I said, these are the numbers, and this is the state of Florida. It's not the entire United States. But the numbers actually have kind of gone down. Just a tad. And again, we're talking about before there was radar, before there was anything else. You could have had a storm, in the 40s or 50s that would have been just like a tropical wave. A lot of rain, whatever, that they may nowadays at one point would have been a named storm, and it is an unnamed storm. Back in the 70s, they said we're all going to freeze to death. The Democrats, the climate alarmists did. Then they said global warming in the 90s, and now they just call it climate change. Anytime a hurricane pops up, it's climate change. Again, worst hurricane to hit 600 and some odd years ago. Well, it's happened before. Now, if it was something that didn't happen before, I could totally see where it's at, but it's happened before. We've had, and again, no hurricane has come close to the 35 Labor Day hurricane, or whatever year it was, 27, 35. Nothing has come close. So, when you get down to it, folks, it ain't as bad as they tell you. There's other things we should probably be a little concerned about, but there's really nothing we can do it, to deal with it. I mean, as I tell everybody, the Earth is bipolar. Florida was underwater, and it will be underwater again. The Earth goes through phases. It gets its period once in a while, and it bleeds off some water. So, everybody going out there trying to make everybody miserable, drive electric cars, yet leading India, China, and all of our enemies to produce whatever the hell they want while we foot the bill in the alarm of climate change. It just doesn't work. People just need to go about their lives. Cars are way more fuel, not so much fuel efficient, but way more, EPA environmentally friendly as they used to be. So, just let us live our lives and let us do things economical. If somebody wants to drive an electric car, that's fine. But produce oil here. Don't be dependent on, our enemies for it. And let us live our lives. That's all. Because you never know what's going to happen the next day. Putin could go crazy. Yellowstone could erupt. Or, astronomers are about as good as meteorologists. We can get hit by an asteroid. So everybody needs to enjoy every day to the fullest and do it that way. Anyhow, folks, for any of you that watch this, thanks for tuning in. And Chugs high.